Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Howdy y'all, Red Laughlin here. We're on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. When I'm not doing TV shows, I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem, treat symptoms, and you'll always be treating symptoms. So that's what I write about. That's what I speak about. I have over 1,000 original content articles on LinkedIn, primarily on the subjects of longevity and age-related issues. I'm also a speaker. I published books for maybe about 50 books, I think, for my clients. And I have 3 TV shows that I do live here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. That's a little bit about me. Our guest today is Dr. Ryan Melsom, and he's a Canadian. Be our second international guest today. Our last guest was from the United Kingdom. And so Ryan is an author of 3 books, had 5 different businesses, PhD, been involved with art, writing, relationship. That's where you're going to get into one of those topics. But we're also going to talk about his book, his latest book. So a lot of different areas, a lot of different ways to go in. So Ryan, please join me up here on stage.
Hi, Red. Pleasure to be here.
I'm glad you made it. So anyway, I mentioned to you backstage, I was doing some research on you, reading some of your blogs, and one of the very first things that hit me, it says, an avid explorer of relationships. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's kind of a different way of introducing yourself.
Okay. Yeah. So, my background is in literature. Actually, I did a PhD in literature many years ago, and I think that one of the things that kind of fascinated me most about that studying was just the way that human beings kind of reflect one another, bounce ideas off one another, become more or become less by connecting or disconnecting from one another. And just the interplay, and then kind of beyond that, I have a real interest in just the relationship between humans and culture, society, technology. I'm a science fiction writer, and so this is where my interests kind of naturally lean towards. But we have our relationships. We have the people that we're very close to, and that we interact with in our daily lives. But then there's also, that's all embedded within all of these things around us. Technology, for example, as we sit here on live streaming on a computer. I've got the city behind me, and I'm up here in Ottawa, and how do these things impact who we are, and how do we impact these things in return?
Okay, you mentioned technology, and I know we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence today, but when you're writing your science fiction, do you have a couple authors that you absolutely have to read anytime a new book comes out?
Well, I have so many. So like I said, I have a PhD in literature, so I've probably read a few too many authors. Okay, I'll answer kind of a quick rundown. So in terms of process, I got to say Stephen King's book called On Writing is just the best. It got me motivated. So he said in that book, sit in a room. You have to leave the door open because your family's more important than your writing. Sit in a room and write 1,000 words a day, and do that for 3 months, and you have a manuscript. And so I did that, and I wrote 3 manuscripts in the last 2 years. I've got one coming out now shortly. So So definitely him. My heart and soul writer is an old guy named Malcolm Lowry. He wrote a very famous novel about 80 years ago now, called Under the Volcano. And I go back to that one just because I connect with it on such a human level. It's so funny, all that passage of time, and yet it still just rings so true to me. And then I've got a few favorite science fiction writers. There's a guy named Paul Tassi. He writes on, video games and culture and science fiction and movies and all kinds of stuff. And he's got some really great, very actiony, fun books. So, to help me get in that frame of mind. Another guy named Jeff Summers. He has a series of books called The Electric Church, and they're just the most over-the-top, gritty, shoot-'em-up, ridiculousness that I've pretty much ever seen. So I love those, and they help me get beyond just my own kind of current frame of mind. I'm sitting here in an office, and got a pretty standard life by some measures. So they help me think.
What is the backstory for your newest book, Gods of a New World?
Oh yeah, so. Okay, so I have kind of a long-standing interest in just mythology, spirituality, all this kind of stuff, right? And so I had this crazy idea a while ago that I should write a book, sort of like the Greek myths or something like that, but it was going to be modern day. So instead of I don't know, Zeus and Athena, it would be like Amazon and the GOP or whatever, just taking these big kind of huge monumental things in society and sort of deifying them, turning them into sort of metaphors for something else. So that's kind of where it started. But it was a little too brainy, a little just too experimental, and didn't really have a trajectory or kind of story. So I started reading a bunch of science fiction and cyberpunk, and just trying to kind of build a world of ideas out of that. And then I started picturing spaces. I love spaces. I think they're just fascinating. And I envision spaces. I think I watched too much science fiction as a kid. So, the stuff pops into my head in these pictures. And then I'm like, okay, well, what would a character be doing in this space? So, what would a character be doing in say in the high hills of Nepal, and surrounded by, mostly natural and kind of gritty things, but then also like this weird infusion of future technology and holographs and all this kind of stuff, and a whole bunch of wires overhead. So I really visualized places, and then, the people kind of emerged into those places, I guess. I guess that comes back to what I was started with about, relationships and the relationships we have.
It's interesting because our last guest on my show, The Corner Bookstore, is from Nepal. So you just have to pick a word out of the realm that you wouldn't think that would have some connection today. But
love it.
But in your writing, the editor, you have to really have a specialized editor, because you're outside the bounds of a typical romance or Western or business or whatever. So how do you find the right kind of editor to get you a better writer?
Through like a super weird serendipitous path, let me tell you. So I work this office that I'm in right now is it's Engineers Canada. That's where I work, right? So I work with volunteers from across the country, a lot of engineers, and it just so happened that one of my chairs of a committee that I help oversee, her husband is a very accomplished science fiction writer. Edward Willett is his name, and he runs a very small press called Shadowpaw Press out of Regina, Saskatchewan. And so we just started talking. I started talking to my friend's husband, Ed, and one thing led to another. They discovered I kind of was a little secretive about the book, so I self-published a couple books a few years ago, about 8 to 10 years ago. And I like those books. I have, no embarrassment about them, but they're a little more experimental. I was a little closer to grad school and things like that. They weren't like super, I don't know, practical or readable books in some ways. So, but they found out about them, and then I was in trouble because Ed, they read one and they're like, oh yeah, this guy can write some words. And yeah, we just had a few conversations over dinner and it went from there.
Well, I noticed that I was doing some research, and I mentioned you again just before the show.
Yeah.
On your website, you have some blogs. I went through there, and you had one the one brutal question or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but you have in there a question, what is your life's purpose? And I don't know, I'm kind of picking on you because now you wrote this thing, who knows how long ago, but it was something that caught my attention because it's something we don't, we sometimes think about it, sometimes we don't. Any thoughts you want to pass on to our audience with regard to, quote, that one brutal question?
Well, let me see. I mean, I think that we probably go through life a fair bit. I shouldn't say we. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know for me personally, a good chunk of my life, I'm like, I know I'm passionate. I know I care about things. I know I want to be a good person and bring good things into the world, but it was always hard to kind of connect that to something, to really kind of poignant, blunt question. So I guess that's probably where that blog post is. I'll be honest, it's a while since I wrote that one, but this is a question that's circulated a lot for me. I think that one thing for me that I realized is, my purpose has tended to be more about helping other people find their voice and helping them kind of connect with their ideas and be authentic in who they are. I do this in my work, in my day job. I do this, with my kids, with my family, with my friends. I used to teach university classes, and I really tried to help students find out kind of who they were. So I think that the idea of like voice is connected to purpose. I think if you're kind of alienated or you don't really understand what your purpose is, or you haven't at least asked the question a few times, then it's hard to find your voice. It's hard to really know. And I could definitely see that. I wrote a book that will never see the light of day, right after I finished my undergrad from university in 2001. And you can really tell, like, I didn't know my voice at that point. And it comes through in the funniest ways.
That's so true, because I think a lot of us have those kind of situations, and as you said, you'll never see the light of day. So, not a problem.
Please no.
Okay, so how long did it take you to write Gods of a New World?
Yeah. So, like I said, I used the Stephen King method. So it took me exactly 3 months, 90,000 words. That was my target. That's what I hit, more or less. But there's a process after that. So I spent a summer, it was just a lovely thing to do, honestly. I kind of carved out a bit of time before kids went to bed, a little bit of time in the evening and just kind of plodded away at it for 3 months, set it aside for a while, and actually started another project while it was on the back burner. And then, I came back to it, went through an personal editing process, got a bunch of incredibly generous friends, and my wife, who is, of course, my best friend, but got, them to have a look at it too and give some feedback. And then, so gosh, we're still talking like 2 years ago. And then there's just a huge process of working with the editor, getting that all sorted out and going through contracts and his, editing process. He's a one-man shop. He's got a ton of work that he does. And so, just kind of waiting for myself to come up in queue. And then it's been very intensive actually over the last month and a half, just bringing it to that final polish and getting it off to the printers and that kind of thing. So, yeah. Tell
me about your cover creation.
Yeah. So speaking of using AI to, mess around with covers, it's kind of a really funny story. So I had been identified as an author that was going to be kind of get some extra promotion. I was put on something called the National Hot List by a literary press group in Canada. So that was really exciting for me. But it meant that there were some really specific tight deadlines to get into things like advertisements and all this kind of stuff. So a deadline came up. We had been trying to work with the designer and this person had sent along sort of a draft, and it's really kind of not satisfied. It really didn't speak to what the actual book was. It's a very gritty kind of like ground level novel in a lot of ways. So when I provided feedback, the person said, sorry, I don't think I can do this. And I was like, okay, well, I have a long, this is part of my being a Renaissance man, a lot of different interests, long background of design and all kinds of stuff. So I went to town, I got AI going. I knew exactly what I wanted the kind of picture or the cover to feel like. I wanted it to be gritty, kind of haunting. a little like spooky, kind of sophisticated in the color palette. So I used some of my own design chops to pull together the text in that on the cover, and so yeah, I guess that's how it came together. Yeah. But yeah, the AI thing, and AI is a big part of the book too, and so it was kind of perfect actually that I ended up having to resort to the robot overlords to help me pull some together. But I'm very happy with it. It was very well received actually when we put it together. So
how long you been interested in AI?
Gosh, well, I mean, I think that my interest kind of exploded just right around the time that everybody else did. When ChatGPT first came out. That was I'd always had an interest in technology, kind of more specifically in social media and what that means for who we are and all these kinds of questions. And so, yeah, you can see some of my design work there actually on the cover. That's an old kind of something that I did. That one's actually about AI. And what does that say? 2011, 2016? Okay.
16.
Yeah. So that was it's a bit of a joke, Clippy from Microsoft.
No, I don't.
This is a little, okay, anyways, this little funny icon from the 1990s old version of Word where he'd come up and give you a bit of advice. So this is if Clippy went awry and developed his own intelligence and took over the world and created. So, yeah. So anyway, yeah. I got really interested in it, obviously through my work, working with engineers and thinking about public safety and things like that. And I think the one thing that sort of differentiates me from others who are talking about this is there are a lot of people who are specifically in tech and come at it with that lens. And my lens is literary, right? So I'm not maybe as interested in understanding like the deep kind of technical dimensions of it, but it's more about like, how is this going to change who we are? Or how can it maybe benefit who we are? Or how is it going to, strengthen or weaken, what the species is? How does it affect the future of the species? And so those were my questions around AI, and I just keep on digging into them.
Okay, when you get into the trillionaire, billionaire world and AI, is there any change in our currency that we're currently using into crypto or blockchain or whatever else the current terminology is? I'm not.
Yeah. I'll be honest, Red. Like I'm probably not nearly up to speed enough on that stuff. I'm going to be left behind. No, I mean I was thinking essentially, $1 trillion US. What I actually did, I did do a bit of like kind of, back of napkin math on this one. And I just looked at, current rate of acceleration and how much people are making now and how much they're, the highest kind of incomes in the world go up each year. And so that's how I kind of projected it. I do think, it was funny because when I wrote the book, nobody really talked about trillionaires. It got the little red squiggly line when I tried to type it into Word. But now it's actually popped up in a bunch of media articles. We have trillionaires by 2035 and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, trillion US. That's the real money. But it might look pretty different.
It's interesting because I think back in my younger years, a millionaire was okay. That was it. A billionaire didn't exist. That was just way outside even the realm of my brain's thinking. Yeah. And yet now we're literally pushing, almost able to touch being a trillionaire.
Yeah. And I think Elon Musk got about halfway there before some of his setbacks, and it's not inconceivable.
I thought it was interesting the other day. Somebody's talking about him and his businesses. His business is not cars. It's not this. It's artificial intelligence and engineering.
Interesting.
That's his business, but we don't think of it as, we look at it as products. So we look at the product as the representation of the person, not necessarily how that product actually came to be. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. No, he's got a fascinating engineering mindset. It's I liked it when he was focused on products. I think, I find him a little harder to kind of get behind it, but I think, he probably did a lot of good for the world by making, electrical vehicles kind of feasible and things like this. So, I'll give the man credit where it's due for those things. I think he, well, anyway, we all have our times where things don't work as well, but but no, I do think like one thing I've learned about engineering is like engineering is not like a specific activity. It's like there's a mindset, and in the work I do here, it's it's all about like ethics and protecting the public and understanding what they need. But there's also the kind of flip side of that, and I think this is probably like emphasized a lot with somebody like Elon Musk, which is just the innovation side. It's like, how far can you push, scientifically founded, creative, thinking, like what new possibilities. And so, yeah, I think engineers doing the most fascinating work are always working at the front of that. I think it's important to keep sight of ethics. Otherwise, we get things like what happened in the novel, which is, I don't know how much I can say about that. Can I jump into that?
Well, we're getting ready to go to a commercial break.
Things get dicey.
When we come back from the break, three things I want to talk about. Number one, I noticed you have a black belt. Talk a little bit about how that happened, and then I'd like to get a little bit further into engineering and AI. So why don't we go ahead and take about a 60, 90-second break here, and we'll come right back. I'll make new introductions after that.
In a world craving connection, one platform dared to dream bigger. USA Global TV and Radio, a beacon for global voices, authentic storytelling, and elevated listening. Led by visionary Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, the journey from a spark to a global force is now captured in one inspiring book. Honored with YouTube's Silver Creator Award for surpassing 100,000 subscribers. Discover the evolution, the challenges, the triumphs, and the unstoppable spirit that created a global movement. Executive producer Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang. Creative director Paul Garcia. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Now an Amazon #1 new release in paperback and ebook. Broadcasting Brilliance, the evolution of USA Global TV and Radio, is inspiring readers around the world. Join the movement that's redefining global media one story at a time.
Howdy, Red Laughlin back here on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. My guest today is Dr. Ryan Melsom. He's from Canada, and we're talking about his book, his background, his engineering, artificial intelligence, a lot of different areas. So, Ryan, please join me back up here on stage.
Hello again.
Black belt. Why? How did that happen in the midst of everything else that you were doing?
Yeah. So I sat there and I watched my kids for about 4 or 5 years do their karate tests, and I knew actually a solid amount of the moves and that just from having seen them done it so many times for so long, and I thought, and I don't know, it's just so weird the way that life works that way, because I when I was a kid I wanted to do black belt. I was like, that sounds like the coolest thing ever, but then I sat there and watched my kids and like somehow couldn't make the connection, like, they've got adult classes here, I can just go and do them. And so I did. And I started during the pandemic. And so I was doing virtual classes and then went from there. And 4 years later, last year in 2024, I earned my black belt, my first degree black belt. I'm still doing it. Very happy. I don't think I've ever been stronger. I might not look as good as I did when I was younger, but it's fascinating. And just the element of like discipline and discovering like how much further one can push themselves, showing up on the hard days and the easy days, all this stuff is just, it's character building. It's fun, it's exhausting. And well, that's how that, I guess, fits in.
It's one of those passions that you have a chance to now enjoy.
Absolutely.
You conquered the harder parts of it, and now you're reaping the reward. So
most definitely,
engineering something has always been near and dear to my heart. I've always worked in a lot of industries that had that, and the last couple of ones I've had is we look at the product from the conceptual level, because you have to order the parts and get them in where they're at, put them together, stock them, etc., test them, maybe not market them because that's a sales job to get the jobs, but then you also have to retire them. And we're seeing a lot of things where you have a product, but how do you retire a Tesla or something else? How do you retire those big batteries? Is there a recycle program for them? So when you're looking at engineering, most of us just have a very narrow focus on some aspect of the cycle. But you were talking earlier about it's a bigger mindset than just putting a blueprint together.
Yeah, and this is like a kind of key question, because there's like ideas like infrastructure resilience and kind of like long-term, planning. There's planning, and again, like I'm not an engineer, and I don't want to pretend for a second that I am, but I work consistently with engineers, so it's like rethinking things that there was always this idea of like looking at the historical data and approaching things that way, but the world has changed a lot, and with things like climate change, and that like the storm that you used to plan for, a 30-year storm and things like that, suddenly it becomes a 100-year storm, because that's happening on a more regular basis. 100 years not the 100-year anymore. So it's a big question, and it's hard because I work with engineering regulators, and their main goal is to protect the public, but what's the scale of that protection of the public, right? So like if you say develop a car, like are you required to have some way to like dispose of the components, or recycle the components after the usefulness of that vehicle is done, and things like that. So yeah, this question of like what's the kind of scale we're planning for? I mean, I think this runs across like our species right now. Like, are we just trying to make it through the year? It felt like that a lot during the pandemic. Or are we doing something bigger? Are we trying to think bigger and like think, what's the world going to look like in 1,000 years? I went to Europe last month. It was just one of these fluky things that I was so lucky to get to do. But there, when they're planning infrastructure and when they're planning like parks projects and things like that, like they want to make stuff that lasts 1,000 years. It's such a unique mindset. I think in North America, we approach things a little differently. So,
yeah. Product safety is a big issue, particularly when you're in the design end of anything. Yep. And in the process of talking to you today, Ryan, I was thinking, what about product liability when you have AI as the primary designer? I don't even know how is that something that you all even talk about?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I'm writing a paper on that right now. So this is probably how I do a lot of research for my my secret life as a writer here. But we're looking just exactly that question: who is liable? So there's an interesting case in the States. I think it's called Section 231. Anyway, don't need the details too much there, but it's a question of like, is it the user who's liable? Is it the provider who's liable? Or is it the designer who's liable? So in that case, even though there can be all these kinds of, manipulations and things like that going on behind the scenes, it's ultimately the user who's liable for kind of misuse of something. So if you post, I guess, something that's breaks the law or whatever, it's not, the platform has no accountability, the designer has no accountability. So yeah, but this is a big question, and it's interesting to see like where it's going to lie. So like one of the in one of the other manuscripts I've written in the last few years, like there's somebody who has a job which is basically like a bullet taker for AI, right? So like AI is going to get it right like most of the time, probably better than most human beings can, and like that ratio is going to only improve over time with things like engineering. But then, if something does go wrong, there is that question of accountability. And that's where like, the professions come in right now. There's somebody who you can say like, look, you didn't do your work properly here, and it's had these impacts, and, you're liable for that. So, I think ideally what we're doing is like using these tools to collaborate, to probably push our own thinking further, to innovate. But at the end of the day, like, there's a sense that like, at least currently, a machine is not, considered any kind of, conscious being. And so, people still have a pretty important role to play there.
Well, I know a lot of authors, now when I say a lot of authors do not want to use AI for whatever, spell checkers and things like that, grammar checkers. But they have the, it's my baby, it's my intellectual property. I don't want to share it, but I find that I can take what I've written, it's already my intellectual property, put it into AI and say, proofread this for 7th grade level. Yeah. Because I write a lot of technical stuff. I want to be able to have somebody else understand what I'm saying. And so I think there's a lot, it's a tool. It's like anything else. A hammer doesn't matter. There's a tool and there's good applications for it. And so I think as an engineer, as a lawyer, as a doctor, in fact, I'm starting to see a lot now on the diagnosis with AI assist that apparently is significantly better than just a simple human brain thinking, well, you hear the symptoms, here's what it could be.
Yeah.
And I think a third of the U.S. deaths have some aspect of an error made by a doctor or a hospital. And that's a big number on an annual basis.
Yeah.
So I think let's talk. We have a few more minutes before we get to the end of the show. Let's talk a little bit about AI. You said there's a future there, you think?
Oh yeah, most definitely. So I guess I mean this is what my book explores. God's the New World. So it's like a fictional world. It's a world where the trillionaires, like just slight extension of kind of where we're at now. So it's near future. They have all the money in the world, so they can kind of do whatever they want. They have incredible access to data. They can see pretty much everything that's going on in the world by everybody at this incredibly granular level. And then, they're also they have this hyper intelligence. They have AIs, at this not too distant point in the future, they can think like thousands of steps ahead of human beings. So there's really like kind of, they start to think of themselves, this group of sort of super elites, they start to think of themselves as gods and even call themselves gods. They're kind of joking about it, but so what they decide is that they're going to get their AIs on a very specific problem, which is how can they integrate their consciousness into reality? So how can they embed themselves right into, the air we breathe and the stuff around us? And so, yeah, that's like, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen or anything like that. And it's not really about that. For me, it's just about like what differentiates, these, the sort of most kind of powerful people in the world from, like, say, the Greek gods. They have all these powers, they can do all these things, they have, they can see things all around the globe. What's different about it, or what's the same about it? And yeah, that's one of the kind of key questions. I mean, there's a huge amount of like hubris, like this is just over the top, maybe, I don't know, arrogance or something like that, and definitely see some arrogance from some of these folks right now, but at the same time, it's there's a fascinating question. It's like, what does the average person do in that situation? What does, every single possible facet of life has been monetized, and you can like absolutely like, even your like street vendor can't compete anymore with like AI created little street vendor businesses all over the place. It's going to be, potentially so smart. So like, what is the role of people in that world? What can we keep doing? Is this something that should be pushed back against? That's one of the key things that happen with the central characters of this novel. And, and also like, the one character, his name is James Kessler, and he grew up watching Arnold Schwarzenegger movies with his dad. And, there's this like heroic hero of the past, this like super macho dude who could like, go and shoot up any foe and not even blink about it. But he's not that. He's just an average guy. He's an average guy in a world that has gone very, very, very crazy and kind of far beyond his control. And there's a big question of like, what do you do in that?
You mentioned consciousness and trying to create. And
yeah.
One of the first things that occurred to me was 1 or 2 episodes of Star Trek way back
yeah.
then. And when you start getting alien life forms, and and literally it's the consciousness of that life form that exists, and not necessarily a real physical body per se. And so, here they're 40 years, 50 years back in that thought process. And now you've given them the solution with AI to actually make that happen.
Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
And with the AI evolution, if we look at ChatGPT 4 years ago, and you look at what's available on AI today, I mean, I saw one the other day where you just describe a scene and it automatically generates a movie as you're describing the scene.
Yep.
Pick a person, a place, a theme, a location, it doesn't matter. And here is the actual movie being developed as you're talking. And we would never, I mean, that's something that's even beyond, having the watch that has the video thing on from Dick Tracy way back when. So it's just, the AI
from Star Trek. Yeah.
And in fact, one thing I saw yesterday, why isn't it on Star Trek they don't use seatbelts? I have no idea. We talk about safety.
The AI just protects them so much. It's like they're in a cocoon all the time.
Yeah. So I guess you're going 1,000 million miles an hour and you don't need a seatbelt. Okay. Not a problem. But anyway, the AI, as you see it, is this going to be a follow-on in your next book, or are you going to go slightly different, or are you going to create a new AI?
Yeah. So, well, I can tell you, like, just kind of roughly speaking. So I wrote one book that's more like a gothic, medieval kind of apocalypse thing, where there's a demonic invasion of the world, and people from competing systems of belief have to come together. So there's like a priest, there's a witch, and there's an Eastern monk, like sort of like a Buddhist monk or something like that. And they're like, they have to basically collaborate, put their heads together to, somehow try to stem this terrifying invasion that's going to happen. So that's, it's funny because it doesn't seem like an AI book, but maybe it is. I mean, maybe this is just like different ways to kind of wrap my head around this idea of like some big overwhelming force that, people kind of have to think what they're going to do about it. The other one that I wrote is about, again, like, so basically there's a kind of demon lord who's discovered a way to leech the life force of humanity through people's devices. And so there's this sort of plague that's happening across the world. So I branch out, a lot. I don't think that, like, I'm not like set on like AI specifically. I think what I am fascinated with there, and that kind of keeps on coming up in a variety of ways, is like just this idea of like just the force of overwhelming change, this force of like something so big and so kind of inconceivable that like and then just like how does that impact like an individual, and how does that impact like our relationships, to come back to it, how does it impact like the world we live in, and how does our purpose change, and all that kind of stuff, amidst these huge kind of historical or even bigger than historical kind of forces. So, yeah.
Okay, so I can expect from you a Borg cube with intergalactic alien AI.
You betcha. We'll love it. To me, it's metaphors. Yeah.
Ryan, how do people buy your books? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, for sure. So I am my books are available through all major retailers. You can get them on Amazon, Barnes Noble. I don't know what the biggest bookstores are down there in the States, but certainly Chapters Indigo up here in Canada. So that's where you can find those. Yep, there it is. And it comes out July 29th, so it's not out yet, but you can pre-order anytime. And if you like it, please spread the word. If you want to connect with me or, start a conversation, I'm available. I'm mostly active on Blue Sky right now. I love the community there. I think there's a lot of really interesting, engaged folks on there right now. So, please, by any means, reach out to me there. And I have a Facebook page. Both of these are just at Ryan Melsom. So they should be fairly easy to find, or you can search me in the search bar. And and I do have my website, ryanmelsom.com. Red, you dug through it. As I said, like it's been a little bit. I think if you look at some of the date stamps on those, but yeah, a lot of exploration on there. And who knows? Maybe if the book takes off, I can spend a little more time blogging again. I certainly love it. It's just so many things to do.
After your book comes out, I invite you to come back on the Corner Bookstore, and we'll talk about your book and have a lot more fun. But Ryan, thank you so very much for your time today. I learned a lot, and I enjoyed it. Again, I appreciate your contribution.
Thank you. It's been an honor. I really appreciate you, letting me come on the show and chat. And I really enjoyed chatting with you too. So, great.
Take care. Have fun. Enjoy life, and we'll catch you later.
All right.
Red O'Loughlin here. We're wrapping up the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Ryan Melsom, Dr. Ryan Melsom, was our guest today, and I look forward to seeing him again here in the future. Great conversation. His book's coming out the end of July. Gods of a... Hang on. Well, all of a sudden... Gods of a New World, Ryan Melsom, Melsom. Okay, coming back over here real quickly. My next show coming up in literally about 30 seconds. Well, 30 seconds this show will be over, but in about 20 minutes is called Talking Heads. And I talk about, generally speaking, most of the time, a health and wellness aspect of life. I talked last week about longevity secrets updated. I wrote a book on it talking about different causes of aging. And there's a dozen or so hallmarks of aging, and I'm going into detail about each one of those. So please join me on Talking Heads on USA Global TV and Radio Network. Take care, y'all. Bye now.
Ever dreamed of hosting your own TV show, sharing your story with a global audience? Now's your chance to shine. At USA Global TV and Radio, we make it easy for you to create, host, and broadcast your very own TV show. Whether you're a storyteller, entrepreneur, or industry expert, we help you bring your vision to life. With our exclusive interview, live streaming, and podcasting training, you'll gain the skills and confidence to captivate your audience. Our global platform ensures your voice is heard worldwide. Join our community of creators who are already making an impact, one show at a time. Step into the spotlight. Host your own TV show on USA Global TV and Radio. Book your discovery call today at usaglobaltv.com. Copyright 2025 USA Global TV and Radio. All rights reserved. Terms and conditions apply. To learn more, visit usaglobaltv.com.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book Dementia Home Care: How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to TracyCramPerkins.com. Tracy Cram Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio.
Conveniently located in the Cherry Hill Mall in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Avio Art specializes in custom art and photography printing. From museum-quality canvas prints and stretching to photo restoration, fine art reproduction, and framing with museum-grade glass, every service is completed in-house with exceptional attention to detail. Visit avioart.com or email support@avioart.com. In a world that moves fast, there's strength in the woman who moves with grace. Introducing Bay London, where confidence meets craftsmanship. Each piece is intentionally designed for the woman who knows her worth, crafted from luxurious Italian eco-fabrics that feel as good as they look. With elegant coverage, effortless support, and timeless style, our swimwear celebrates both your body and your essence. Founded by fashion expert Carrie Sykes, Bay London is made for women who want to feel sexy, stylish, and seen. From poolside to beachside, sunrise to sunset, Bay London outfits you for every moment that matters. Because beauty isn't about age, it's how you wear your confidence. Bay London, confidence, elegance, effortless luxury. Visit baylondon.com. Act now for your exclusive friends and family discount of $35. Scan the QR code. Bay London, where confidence meets craftsmanship. Proud sponsor of USA Global TV and Radio.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honored to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dies. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.